Greetings and welcome back to Switch to Linux with another supporters stream. And before I forget, let's go ahead and unmute everybody. How's it going, everybody?
Hello.
Hello.
Just fine.
Hello.
I just finished some of my peppermint duties.
All right, peppermint duties. All right, peppermint calls. Oh man, where's my coffee? Oh, use the force. My coffee's up front. It's too far away.
Oh no.
Oh well. Anyway, who else? Who has anything exciting going on today?
Nothing here. We're just getting ready for some thunderstorms to come chiming through in a couple hours.
Oh, fun. It might be the tail end of the storm that just passed through here a couple hours ago. It was like perfectly sunny, and all of a sudden everything went black. It looked like the apocalypse had occurred. The entire lake I was by just went, and then it was gone just as quick. I'm like,
That's how it was for me this morning.
Yeah.
Then it all went away.
So
then you got it.
Yeah. Well, we had. I don't know. We've been having some weird weather, and then we've also had weird internet. Like I was down at the lake where I oftentimes do the show, and I just was not able to pull enough bandwidth, so I had to jump in the car and drive a little bit. So I came up this way, and I drove literally 0.2 of a mile up the street, and now I have really good internet. It was literally I was uploading a video for the premiere at 9:00 tonight on the other channel. It was like taking an hour and a half. I get here and it finishes the upload in like 30 seconds. Like, oh, I should have just saved it for here.
I had a new experience a few days ago. I was going to the fridge to eat some breakfast, and I noticed there was a spider inside my fridge. So I'm starting to wonder: does that mean that I'm not that I'm having eating too little and opening the fridge too seldom?
That might be the case. Yeah, I would say I was leaving my friend's house the other day, and there's this 3-inch caterpillar that was scrolling across the porch. We're talking like not really thin 3 inches. It was a caterpillar this thick, 3 inches long. It was like huge. It's like, are you coming to kill us? What's going on? They wanted to save it. I'm like, yeah, you save it, put it in the garden. I said, don't put it there. Those are your good flowers. To expect it wherever you put this thing, it's going to eat everything because it's big enough. It looks like a teenage caterpillar.
The one thing that I'm wondering is how did it get into the fridge?
That's a good question that you should ask yourself. Maybe just an option.
It's an Antarctica frost spider.
There you go. Ever play like Final Fantasy? I'm sure there's a frost spider on there. I mean, I've seen frost wolves, frost giants, frost spiders. Why not? Shadow says maybe just an option in the installer to have 2 main ISOs for free and non-free. Here's the fun thing. One of the things that they had mentioned, and we're going to get to the article here in a bit about Debian going non-free. They do have a free and a non-free Debian image. And one of the problems they had said is that a lot of people just don't know the non-free exists. But it's a simple matter of going in, installing it, and then running a couple commands after you add the non-free to the repos. I mean, it's easy to add the non-free stuff to Debian. And I think,
if I'm not mistaken, most of the non-free ones come with the actual desktop already on the ISO. You just choose your desktop.
Maybe I think that there are some Debian builds that will do that as well. Now, Selby, weren't you saying at one point in time the only reason Debian is not on the GNU Foundation website is because it's easy to add the non-free drivers? Is that you saying that, or is that somebody else?
It's not that it's easy, but they are documenting on their wiki how to do it. Even if you have to go hunting for
which is nonsense. I mean, if what is with this? Oh well, it's non-free, but you make it easy to document how. That's what we should have. We should have good documentation.
There is another
Debian wiki has a wiki on how to install NVIDIA drivers for your NVIDIA graphics card.
Mm-hmm.
And just recently, the 460 drivers, when Debian did their latest big update, the 460 drivers, when it first started, it said that the 460 drivers are unstable and push Q to quit. on a regular update. So I pushed Q to quit, and it uninstalled the 460 drivers and installed the 470 drivers, which allowed me to put in a newer NVIDIA card without juggling any drivers.
Yeah, there you go.
But there is one thing to consider in this topic that we have for today. As you said, the Free Software Foundation do not list Debian as one of the free distributions for the sole reason these days that they are documenting how you could add in non-free repo. This also means that if you install the regular Debian and do not change the sources files to add the non-free, you are running a completely free software operating system. And with the proposal that this particular Debian developer is advocating for, if they do this, you would no longer have a default free software Debian. And I just watched the DebConf talk that he had a DebConf that was in Kosovo in this year, and there were several options. And he is not saying dictating what they should do, but he is listing a list of options. My favorite one is to do what they are already doing. They have the regular ISO images, and they have these unofficial images that include this non-free firmware, and I think also drivers, but I'm not sure. One of the developers at the end suggested that they could have them side by side on the download page, and so that and say that if you have so and so, then you probably you should use this, and if not, then you use this one, and have them side by side, and the default could very well be to have the only for free binaries in them. So
I got news about this. If you're running Secure Boot and UEFI, you're running non-free stuff, because you need the Microsoft Windows keys that are installed on the motherboard to complete the UEFI system on boot with the shim package that comes in the boot system.
No, you don't. You can disable Secure Boot.
Debian explains this explicitly.
Well, what Dan said, though, Sabu, is if you're using UEFI and you have Secure Boot enabled. Yeah.
Yes.
But, the Secure Boot is by itself. It is not software in the normal sense. It comes as part of the BIOS. You can upgrade it, sure, but it's not software in itself. So it's not a problem that is a pressing matter at this point. So it's a difference with what is already installed in the chip that comes with the computer and software that you are installing onto the computer. Because software that you can't change is not software, actually.
Yeah, since we're already discussing the topic, rather than going through the comments now, we'll hit comments a little bit later. But here's kind of the article that kind of starts this. So there was a discussion at the Debian conference that they're discussing putting non-free drivers inside of Debian by default. A lot of the reason is, I mean, one of it is Windows computers and just Windows with its influence over the computer manufacturing industry is starting to make computers that if you don't have special equipment, it's just getting harder and harder to find stuff to work on it. Sure, you can with Arch, but Debian, you generally are not going to run Debian or anything based on Debian in cutting-edge hardware. And if you want cutting-edge hardware, you're not going to be running Debian unless you work around for some of the latest non-free stuff. And so that's what they're doing. And they did a vote, and the vast majority of developers, they said, were in favor of adding at least some degree of non-free software in there. So they had a few options. Keep the current situation, no change. Stop providing non-free unofficial images, which would mean the non-free go to become official images. Advertise the images with non-free firmware as official alongside with classic pure Debian image, or include non-free firmware in the official Debian images. I mean, overwhelmingly they voted for 4, include non-free firmware in the official images. I still would like to see a pure free version of Debian, and what this is probably going to mean is we may get a fork, another fork this far into Debian, which I think would be odd. All right, I'll open up for anybody who wants to.
Yeah, there's
have that
one
discussion.
error in your DS. Second option is they stop providing. This means do not ship the non-free binaries at all. Remove them completely, and not. And if the users need them, then you have to build your own ISO images. That is he is including all the options that was suggested or that he has heard. So he was including all the options, even those that he was not in favor of.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished watching the actual Debian talk that he talked about.
So basically, unless anyone wants to jump in, basically the big problem with Debian, of course, and somebody had said it in the comments, if they just fix their website, because their website is a giant mess. In reality, if you go to the Debian website, you do have documentation for writing the non-free. You do have the option to find the non-free and the free versions. But there is a lot of stuff on their site that is hard to find. So here's the unofficial images with non-free included. Here is down here, so you can get those. Here's the images of the stable. And there's just so much, and it's not particularly user-friendly, and so a new person to Linux is like, I don't even know what to do on this page. That's, I think, what they're kind of dealing with. But I like the way they currently have it, but I agree, it's not as well marketed as it should be that you can get them. So these ones here, official of images of the stable, unofficial images with non-free firmware. So even this, they're doing a pretty good job of putting them right next to each other. So I would vote for no real change, because just make sure this is easier to understand. That's my thought. But what do you guys think?
I think that just take the one that I'm using. I'm using Magea. They have one image or two. They have 32 and 64 bits, and I think also a few ARM images. But they have one image, and they have a net installer, which is not relevant. But they ask a question at the very beginning when about which repos you want to include, and they have 3. You have the core kind of repo, and then you have the additional. You have a tainted repo with software that is free software, but that is patent encumbered, so that they could be illegal in the US and not in Europe, or vice versa. And then you have a non-free repo, and the default is to include the core and the non-free, but not the tainted. But it always asks the user to confirm that you want this, and you can. And I will go out of my way to ensure that I do not have any non-free software on my system. If that means that some hardware doesn't work, then so be it. Then I'm not using the hardware. Yeah. And if there is a graphics card that won't work because of this, then I am replacing the graphics card, or I'm replacing the computer. I am not using non-free drivers under any circumstances.
Yeah, so this would be definitely a deal breaker for you for Debian.
If they as long as they have a question in the beginning that let me choose, then I have no problem with making it easier. But
sure.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. All right, Dan, you wanted to jump in there. What's your thoughts?
I think a lot of this comes from, okay, like you said, also the documentation's kind of like really rough. Well, I know what it's like from working with developers. The documentation is kind of time consuming to do. It's not an easy thing to stay on top of.
Well, I mean, to be clear, I'm not talking right here about the documentation. I'm talking about the website.
Okay, well, the website too, it takes manpower. This is the issue. And on that, you have free, non-free, you have all these repositories and everything, and they're costing money to run the servers. And for some reason, I get the feeling they're trying to streamline this so it's more manageable, and they don't have to spend so much money on servers. They can perhaps, spend some more time updating their wiki is actually pretty good compared to the other stuff. I have many chunks of their wiki that I refer to all the time, and they do take the time to make them informative.
Yeah, Debian's documentation is very good. I just think people have a concern with their website, which is not a huge deal to overhaul.
What would you rather have, a website or great wiki?
Well, I mean,
Sometimes
I like the great wiki.
Both.
Well, I mean, maybe I need to put my money where my mouth is and reach out and say, "Can I help you fix some of the problems?" Salvo, go ahead.
There you go.
Yeah, about the website, just a point of clarification. The non-free images are more difficult to find than the official images, and that is intentional because of their policy of only using free software. And if you want non-free, then you should work for it in order to find it. And this is what they have voted to change.
Okay. Yeah.
They should they should just put it in the installer. When your installer starts up, it asks you, would you like free or non-free?
This is something that is as critical of it as I have been. I may be slowly coerced to how the Pi Imager system is working, because you load the application up and all of the current version, new versions of everything is there going, okay, which would you like to put on your card? You make your selection, and then it will download it. Now, the downside, and what I didn't like about it, is that it has to download it every time, which means if I'm doing multiple builds in a short period of time, I'm using way too much bandwidth. But if you're doing one off here and there, it's probably a better option because I'm going to want to download the latest stuff anyway. So that's, I mean, maybe we do need something like that, a Debian installer where you get to choose stuff and then it downloads the things you want. Ivan, you've been silent. Thoughts?
I was like right along the lines with what was being said before about having the option of a free versus a non-free setup, because it's like I think you should have that selection available as an option. Otherwise, we're going to get some like they say, okay, well, we're going to do this one, and they're going to fly with it, and the next thing you know, they're leaving it up to folks to fork it, and it's it's like you don't know how else it's going to be changed in order to achieve that fork.
Yeah, I prefer spins anyway, but
yeah. And there's also speaking of getting firmware in order to get the cards to work, there is also the confusion about because firmware is a firmware blob. It's not a driver, because I am. There are some people who would tolerate firmware blobs in order to make the card work at all, but they don't use the proprietary driver for NVIDIA card, for instance. And I'm one of those who I would not use the driver, and if that means I don't have all the full resolutions on, I don't care. I just want a display. I'm not a gamer, and there are some games that I play, but as Stallman has said often over many years, the freedom is worth the hassle of having to sacrifice something.
That is true, and that is the important thing that I think we're finally starting to get to. Like the news articles, as I'm compiling the news for this week, we have been on this long string of articles in the post-Wade world, and every one of these articles is about privacy. And it's just like, we have to recognize that we do need to take steps to safeguard our privacy, because these big companies are seeking our data. And if we do not put our feet in the sand and say no and make it more inconvenient and go through the inconvenience to do it, we are just complicit in handing it over. And to the people that say there is no privacy on the internet, you are flat wrong. You are just wrong. And I have debunked that so many times on this channel. I just want to delete the comments every time somebody says it, because privacy on the internet is a dynamic thing. It's not a single point of your address is out there. It's, do companies actively day-to-day have access to the data that you're searching? Do they have day-to-day have access to the time you're online? Do they have day-to-day the time when you've logged in and logged out of your computer? If you're using Windows 11, they have that. If you're using Linux, they don't. If you're using Google, they have that. If you're using StartPage or Brave, they don't. And there's a lot to be said for that. And so, yes, we have to inconvenience ourselves for the purpose of doing it right. And so on that point, I will completely agree with Richard Stallman that we have to go through the inconvenience. That's the important part.
And Debian should make it easy for those who do care about their freedom and are willing to do the sacrifice. And if there are some systems that they can't run without having a binary blob of some kind, then they don't install. Then they don't use that computer.
Now,
for some of us, it's more important to have the freedom than to have the convenience of something that works.
Now, let me throw this out. Do you think that they might be being discouraged because more and more people are using like Arch-based systems? A lot of it's because Arch-based is going to work on more recent hardware than Debian will. Do you think that has anything to do with it? Numbers of usage, or numbers falling, or are they not falling? I mean, I don't even know.
In the talk, my impression is that it's the regular user who are confused about that their installer either doesn't work, or after installation there are some things that doesn't work, and they have a hard time making it work. So they either can't find help, or they are switching to Ubuntu or some other because of it, and they are wanting to make it easy for the end user that is not technical and often not tech savvy enough to customize an installation even during the installation, to care for those at the sacrifice of those who like the way as it currently is. And one thing to consider is that the upstream kernel developers who are creating the Linux kernel, a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years, I don't remember when, they separated the non-free blobs in the kernel into a separate tarball that you have to manually download, which almost all distributions do. But so Debian is not alone in separating the binary blobs into a non-free repo. The kernel developers also do this now.
Yeah, I mean, once any piece of software starts trying to cater to the inexperienced and trying to make their system more user friendly, I think this marks the beginning of the stable end. That is kind of in a way problematic, as I've said before. You know, a lot of the problems with it, you make it so user friendly that even the experienced guy can't fix it when he needs to. You know?
And even Linus Torvalds said, I think it's 11 years ago now, when he was mad at the GNOME developers, he said that if you make something idiot-proof, then only idiots will use it. So there's that.
Well, Windows is kind of like that. Just about everybody I know that uses Windows don't know nothing really about Windows other than how to start programs with it. And when it doesn't do what they want it to do, they use recovery mode, wipe, plow, remove, and restore, and they're on their way again. They don't try to fix it.
Turning it off and turning it back on is probably an easier solution.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do that and it don't work. Sometimes they have to do a complete recovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But they had some
it's
corner
something built into Windows.
They did mention some corner cases in the because he had this developer had a talk, and he had an open like during the presentations, and he was very clear that he wanted a conversation, there came out some corner cases where a blind user. I have a friend who is blind, and he is running Debian on everything. Even his mother uses Debian because of him. But in order to install Debian, he has to. There's some things you have to type at the installer in order to start this, but he knows this by hand. During the installation, if the sound card is not working and it needs a firmware blob in order to work, there are some sound cards like that now, apparently. Then it would have to ask if you want this sound driver, but if you can't hear or read, then so there are some.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
But I feel that they might use the corner cases in order to justify a change.
Is in their new proposals, are they making a completely free version available?
That is the discussion. One of the options.
Debian people, if you're listening to this, make it available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when this particular build of my mainstreaming computer comes to its next bitter end, I'm not going back in with another Ubuntu-based distro. I'm going with a Debian-based, and it should still work.
Seems to be a going trend.
I mean, Debian-based should. I mean, I could probably do it right now. Debian-based should work just fine on this current system. I don't run a lot of cutting-edge stuff. Everything should work, and all my initial tests seem to suggest it would work. But it's like I don't want to deal with having to risk in this upcoming world anything proprietary unless I absolutely want it or absolutely need it for that build.
And there is an interesting change that they are doing if they are going down this route, which they seem to be doing. They are right now there are 3 repositories in a standard Debian. There is the core. I don't remember the name, but it is the core package repo, and then you have the non-free, and then you have contrib.
It's the contrib. Yep.
Yeah. And they are proposing, and they are already starting testing this, I think. In the next Debian release, if this is the way they're going, they're adding a 4th non-free repo, which only comprises of the non-free firmware, because even the developer who is suggesting this change, he is having no problem with using non-free firmware in order to make hardware works, but he do not want to use to install the other non-free software that is also part of the non-free repo.
Yeah,
so they have a non-free firmware repo in the next Debian.
Yeah, that goes back to I think what Dan was saying with the make it an option inside the installer, right? Because that is the type of thing. If you're managing the way Debian does their repos, you simply need to pull up the app sources and simply add the lines for non-free and contrib to enable those. If that is a simple option in the installer and it's very clearly spelled out in the installer, dude, that's your solution. You have click this button for only free, click this button for non-free blobs for the kernel, click this one for any drivers that might be non-free. It's very easy to set that up in the installer, which they've already done with some applications. What was the PopCon, right? So with PopCon, which was an analytics tool, they always have asked, do you want this enabled or not? If you click no, it doesn't even install it. It's slightly higher level than that, but that's kind of the level that you would need.
Okay,
hold on, Dan.
Yep, go ahead. Dan, go ahead.
Is VirtualBox open source?
Yes.
It is unless you put in some of the components. There's some components that are and some components that are not.
So in other words, it won't work unless you put some non-free components in it.
Yeah, and I don't remember which ones are which. I can't remember if guest
There's
editions
the
are
extension pack
non-free.
and the guest editions.
I think
the
the extension pack and the guest editions I think are the two that are not. Which you can run them without those. They're just not going to be as good of an experience.
Yeah, and Debian has removed VirtualBox altogether.
Oh, so it's not even in the repo anymore?
Oracle.
Yeah, I do too as well.
Let me check in on the comments because we have an active audience today, and I haven't checked in on the comments quite as much. So, let's see. Is it true? Non-free Debian? I don't know. If they would just fix this, is what Shadow says. They'd just fix the web page to be less confusing. I think this would be a non-issue. It's probably don't.
As I said, the confusion on the web page is intentional because they want people to use the free Debian, and if you want a non-free, then you have to work in order to get it.
Yeah, and so if it comes down to let's make it less confusing to give people the option to find the non-free or make the non-free the default, I would certainly say let's clarify it for the people that want the non-free. Make it equally clear so people can have their own choice. There's a thought.
Yeah.
Let's see. Stephen, Mr. Anderson doesn't see any problem with the non-free drivers at all. Okay. Is it Buster or Ballsy? It's Bullseye. It's a rolling distro. The rolling distro is Sid, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Buster and Bullseye are two. I think Buster was 9 and Bullseye's 10, I think.
Rolling, but it'll be the next release.
Yeah. I think one of the next ones, Bookworm, which will be confusing because there is a Linux app called Bookworm.
So Debian 10 is Buster, Debian 11 is Bullseye, and the next upcoming
one
Debian
will
12
be
is
Bookworm.
which is the one that it is.
Yeah, they've been already pushing out Bookworm packages into Bullseye.
Yeah. Die Master says, if this goes through, I wonder if Raspberry Pi will start selling its OS for its hardware. I doubt it. That would probably kill Raspberry Pi.
They actually mentioned this. He actually mentioned this in the talk, and the Pi images already have the non-free firmware blobs because they can't boot, they can't even boot installer without having them.
Yeah, some of the Pis needed some of the non-free stuff, and some of them have more non-free than others. There's actually if you get the Raspberry Pi image, it's like the fully bloated one. That's actually the one that has Microsoft in it. Now there was so much pushback, they silently removed the Microsoft repos from the mid-grade one. But if you do the full-fledged, full application pack for Debian or for Raspberry Pi OS, then you will get the Microsoft stuff in there. The kitty's got the monkey coof. Yep.
What gets me with Debian when you install it is you get all these antique games they package with it.
Yeah.
And you have to use a package installer to actually uninstall them if you don't want them.
Yeah, I am not a huge fan of Debian packaging all the old games. Although, I mean, I understand why they do. You know, back in the old day, if your computer didn't have solitaire on it, it'd be like, whoa, what's wrong with this computer?
Yeah, them dudes up in the space station need something to do.
I know, right? Bobby Baloney says, why would I do this to the kitty? It was his choice. I was just letting the kitty do his thing. Poor kitty's got the pox. That's right. Miss Red, non-free, the way they're going to start selling the ISO. Yeah, my friend apparently, I've had like 3 friends get the coof recently. I'm telling you.
Yeah, my second cousin got the coof last week.
I hung out with him like the day he was kind of sick, and I didn't get the coof. I mean, Bobby Baloney calls me a dork because apparently I didn't turn myself on yet. All right, sorry, man. I'm back. I'm here. Hopefully you can see me now. I don't know. $150 a month for Debian. What are they going? The full-fledged Microsoft subscription package? Go back to Microsoft. Thank you. Other half brought me McDonald's caramel frappe on the way home. Oh, nice. Oh, trying to keep cool. It's 31C in here right now. It's hot and humid though. Like it was slightly warmer yesterday, but it was not humid yesterday. Today's like humid as all get out.
Yeah, sticky out there.
97 at your house in California. All right. Just finished up Debian Nginx reverse proxy. Have to log in the team viewer and cancel my credit card. Life is good. There you go. What? Are you on Scammer Watch? Let's see. If anybody sees any comments that look good, let me know. It's great this morning with a 4-foot-long house centipede running across the bathtub. Can't wait for winter. Yikes. Centipedes are one of those bugs I don't let live. There's a couple bugs I see, I just kill them. Centipedes being one of them, and earwigs. No. Anything that has pinchers on its butt, I will not let live. Ew.
Yeah, they're disgusting. My cousin, he actually hates groundhogs. He'll plug one of those to the 22 and not give it a second thought.
That's what they do out here
They
all over the
crawl
place.
underneath the cement in your garage and your barn and stuff like that and make it cave in.
Someone is buzzing. Is it me that's buzzing, or is it someone else that's buzzing? Which version is LMDE built on? I think, what is it? Is it 11 now, or is it still 10? Which ones?
I'll tell you.
Both
They're
sides
late.
11.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Debian 11 is the current one.
Richard Stallman is feeling pretty smug right now. There you go.
But it's not the first time that Debian has done this, because in Debian 6 was when they removed the non-free blobs from their kernel, and they moved all the non-free firmware into the non-free repo. So in essence, they are going back to the old ways partly.
Centenaire says maybe Free Software Foundation should have tiers of approval. Debian and Fedora can be gold, while Parabola would be platinum. I'd be okay with that. That'd be a cool thing for Free Software Foundation to do. List things on a spectrum, because everything else is a spectrum these days. May as well have our distros be a spectrum of privacy, right?
I think this it's a good thing for Debian that the Free Software Foundation, the single reasons that they are not listing it as a free distro is that they are they have easy available documentation on their wiki in order how you access the non-free thing. And if that is the only thing that keeps them from listing it, then it means that as of Debian 11, if you install a plain Debian without changing the sources file, then you have a free software. Then you did you lose audio?
It might be me that's buzzing.
Yeah. So they have installing Debian currently means that you have a free software distribution, and that is a good thing for Debian.
Although I think these headphones also buzz a little bit.
Only could.
All right, since I'm getting to chat late, let me know, chat. Is it still buzzing?
I'm not hearing any buzzing.
Me neither.
Well, so it may not be buzzing on the Jitsi end. Does anybody have the YouTube stream audio going?
I can turn it on.
Yeah, check it out. See if we're buzzing. I heard possibly a little bit of something, but I know these headphones were also a little messed up too.
I don't really hear any buzzing on the stream.
Maybe it was just some temporary thing that showed up. And I'm not seeing a ton of people about it. I just think I saw two. Maybe it was the same person too. I don't know.
This is nuts. I got too many voices in my head.
What?
Do
the voices in my head bother you? If I remember that old movie.
I remember me and my parents were visiting my sister many years ago. I think almost 20 years ago at this point. She had some problems at that point, but she said that when we came in the door that she heard voices in her phone. We laughed.
That's just the FBI. All right, North Point makes a good question. Debian is geared more towards servers. It seems a lot of people are running it expecting games and such to work. So they have issues. I've never had an issue with Debian, really. So is it that possibly some people like, oh, Debian, that people like old Debian. It's an old Linux distribution, so let's use that for my latest AAA game titles, and it doesn't work.
No,
Is
that's
that
not
part of
it.
the issue?
That's not it, because the issue is even creeping up in the server space. There are some hardware that it's not all many, I don't think, but there are some hardware that is used in servers that you need a non-free binary, non-free firmware in order for this network card to work, for instance. So it is hardware, making hardware work. It's not having a good experience in gaming. That's not the issue.
And Dan, you're saying games work just fine, you say?
If you stay away from the anti-cheat ones and stuff like that, most of them that are listed that'll run on the Steam Deck will run on the Steam client in Debian.
Okay.
If you got them games that have the anti-cheats and stuff like that in them, those are been a Linux problem for a long time. Some of the game vendors have bent to make them work on the Steam Deck, which kind of makes them work on Linux. But modding is another thing you can't really do on Linux very well that you can do on Windows, but I don't think you can do it on Steam Deck either, is game modding. But yes, I game on Linux. I use Lutris and I use Steam.
Okay, good.
It's confusing, and sometimes it's really hard to set up a Lutris run. But if you have a game controller and you want it to guarantee to work with your game, Steam's probably your best bet. It marries your game controller to your games.
Yeah.
Or Lutris, if it's not built into the game, you're out.
How powerful is the Steam Deck for basic computing type stuff?
I don't own one. I don't know. There's a comment that I like. Jared writes, Debian should rename its non-free version to Debian 11 Pro Edition and should cost $140. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Anything is called the COOF these days. Yes, that's right.
Okay, let's take a look at it this way. With Debian, what do we get in Debian that is non-free? I mean, most of the stuff is in the kernel. I mean, there's exceptionally your Broadcom drivers.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, are we talking about adding non-free portions to the kernel? Basically, the headers that we talked about with NVIDIA, is it that we're adding in, or is it actual software?
Even if you don't install the NVIDIA drivers, you get the Nervoso drivers that are the default ones that are made for Linux. They don't work all that great, but it allows you to use an NVIDIA card in Linux. It's just that you don't get the performance you get with the NVIDIA drivers. And most people have notebooks with an NVIDIA GPU for basic work and stuff like that. They don't bother to install the NVIDIA drivers. They just use the default one that comes with Linux.
Yeah, I mean, unless I were doing something like hardcore gaming or something super intensive, I wouldn't bother. I mean, I have whatever default driver is on this. Of course, this is running Ubuntu, so who knows what in the world it is. But I'm also on an AMD, so
you need to stop and ask, how much non-free junk do you really need?
Yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah, and I think this they are considering what to include. They are creating a second non-free repo in Debian in order to facilitate only the necessary parts, and it's only including firmware. They are not talking about drivers. That is a whole a separate issue.
And it boils down to who's going to give the Linux Foundation open source material to make drivers for late break coming motherboards, CPUs, GPUs, chipsets for motherboards and stuff like that.
And as long as you are using only Intel hardware, then in most cases,
even the Intel CPU has changed dramatically over the last couple of years with their
but
efficiency
my point is that if you are like I am worried about having to care about needing non-free stuff in order for your hardware to work. If you are going only Intel, then you will have the free drivers. And Intel just this summer they're having a tour around North America. They have actually created a graphics card, a big beefy graphics card that they are touring and showing. So they are they are using a free driver. They are not. They have said in the London Tech Tips had a whole hour with them asking questions and so on. And one of the first question that they asked was, "Are they going to be a free software driver for this?" And yes, there is. And they clearly said that, unlike other hardware vendors, they don't have a conflicting view about. They are the one of the fathers of open standards, and they are sticking with it. So AMD and Intel graphics card are.
I've had both AMD and NVIDIA, and I didn't like the AMD card. It ran too hot. The performance is sluggish. The frame rates are all over the place. I switched to NVIDIA. Things got a lot better, and they even got way better with the proprietary NVIDIA drivers. And if you don't want to install them through your distro, you can go right to NVIDIA's website and download the pack for Linux. And it's a pain in the butt to do. You have to uninstall all your graphics junk in your computer and bust it right down to the terminal when it boots up to install their drivers. But they do work. I did that with the last Debian install I had, which was actually not that, was LMDE4.
Razzle Review is performing exorcism on the kitchen staff. Okay.
Yeah.
Get those demons. Get them. All right. I think we're coming up on the top of the hour, so I think we're going to jump off here. I've been running this computer like literally all day, so my batteries are getting slightly low.
Yeah.
So I'm going to actually go plug in at my friend's house for a little bit. It's like I'm trying to get ahead on videos and stuff, which is going to work when I have camp, like when I stop having camp stuff. So I just notice tomorrow weekly news roundup, but next week I'll be back at the camp, so no weekly news roundup. If I have time, I may have more time this week. I'll put together one that just premieres. I may or may not get the chance, but I'm running like kitchen staff this week, so I'm not sure how much free time I get having to prepare. I think we have 4 or 5 of us preparing meals for like 50 people, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a whole week. So not sure how much free time we're going to get.
You're going to be sweating it.
Yeah. All right. So any final words? Any last words? Dan, go ahead.
I think it boils down to how much non-free stuff you really need. Sure, you could run a computer completely on today, as it stands, probably on non-free stuff, or free stuff rather, open source stuff. But it may come down to the future where you may need additional drivers to run stuff, or you'll have to wait forever for the Linux Foundation to build them into the kernel, if that's what they do there.
Yeah, Ivan, final words.
I mean, it's like my current setup on LMDEs. I'm pretty much just straight out of the box, and everything runs fine. And it's like, at what point would that actually change, and to what level? And it's like, you won't find out until it happens, really. I might be able to see something saying, "Hey, what's coming down the pike?" or whatnot. But it's tough to make a call right now because my particular use for it is very limited, and but somebody else's might be, well, I need it to run the Hadron Collider, and then I'd be like, hey, you've got a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly get that. If you're trying to open up portals to the third dimension to get like more literal demons in here, I mean, yeah, you will need some non-free drivers to get that stuff working.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the case. And Salbu, your final words.
Yeah, so whatever Debian chooses to do at the end, have an option for those users who really do care about freedom and care about freedom more than anything else. They need to be an ISO that is only free software and don't have any non-free firmware on it.
Yeah.
Or at least have, and if you are going, no, we are doing one. There needs to be a question at in the installer, because one of the things that was suggested by a member of the audience was that to not ask and just install it because you need it in order to work, or have it afterwards, and he's suggested that the question for the skipping it. To have it in the advanced installer, but there are some of us who are advanced and we use the easy installer because it's easy to install, and we don't want the hassle of having to answer all the questions that the advanced installer is asking. So even those of us who are advanced, we want the question at the earliest possible moment. And if you need to word it in a way that don't scare the users, then you need to work on the message, but it needs to be there.
Yeah, as long as we have the option to go completely free, I'm okay with that.
But because it's also a question of educating the end user about what they're about to do, and if they are scared by it, then so be it. But have some documentation that they can read in order to soften the question needs to be there.
All right. So we'll wrap up here. Weekly News Roundup tomorrow. Today at 9, we'll be doing a premiere of our Nahum Chapter 2, the Babylonian Conquest. So we're not going to be live streaming on the Christian channel for a while. I just don't think it hasn't been worth the time to specifically plan it. But I am premiering everything at the same time. And I'll pop in if I can. So that's our series on the prophets, Nahum Chapter 2, the Babylonian Conquest, and all about that. That's 9 o'clock today on the Christian channel at Our Walk in Christ. You can jump on over there if that interests you. If not, we'll see you tomorrow for the Weekly News Roundup. And I have a video ready for Saturday. I bought a little e-ink Kindle, and the task is, can you use it without ever connecting it to an Amazon account? Yes, you can. So I go ahead and talk a little bit about that. So anyway, that's the show today. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we will see you next time.
So say we all.